The alarm screamed through every corridor of the eternal dawn. Red lights flashed in the darkness, painting the faces of 3,000 colonists with the color of blood and fear. The ship was dying, and everyone aboard knew it. Sung ran through the engineering deck, his boots clanging on metal floors. Sweat dripped down his face as he checked one system after another. Every screen showed the same message: critical failure. The navigation computer had made a terrible mistake 3 days ago, and now they were lost in a part of space where no human had ever been. Worse, the jump through space had broken nearly everything that kept them alive. "How long do we have?" Captain Park stood behind him, her voice steady despite the chaos around them. Sung wiped his face and looked at the numbers again. He wished they were different, but they were not. 48 hours, maybe less. The reactor is cooling down and I cannot fix it. We do not have the parts. In the medical bay, worked without stopping. She had been a doctor for 15 years, but she had never felt so helpless. Children cried in their mother's arms. Old people sat quietly, accepting their fate. Everyone knew the truth. They were going to die out here in the empty dark, so far from Earth that no one would ever find their bodies. "Doctor, the oxygen levels are dropping," her assistant said quietly. Nodded, she had seen the same readings. Soon, breathing would become hard, then harder, then impossible. She touched the shoulder of a young mother holding her baby. "Stay calm," she said softly. "Save your strength." But what good was strength when there was nowhere to go? On the bridge, Captain Park made the decision that no captain ever wants to make. She activated the emergency beacon, knowing it was useless. They were too far from any human colony. The signal would travel through space for years before reaching anyone. By then, the eternal dawn would be a tomb full of frozen corpses. "I am sorry," she told her crew. "I got us lost. This is my fault." No one argued with her. No one blamed her. They were all too tired, too scared, too busy saying goodbye to the people they loved. Sung sat in engineering, staring at the reactor display. He thought about his daughter back on Earth. She was only 5 years old. He had promised her he would come back, that he would see her again. He had lied without knowing it. He pulled out a small photo of her from his pocket and held it close. That was when the sensors detected something. "Captain," the officer at the scanning station nearly fell from his chair. "There is a ship out there." Everyone on the bridge froze. Captain Park ran to the display screen. There, in the blackness of space, was another vessel. It was not human. The design was completely strange, with curves and patterns that no Earth engineer would ever create. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. "Are they hostile?" Captain Park asked. "I do not know, Captain. They are scanning us." Sung arrived on the bridge just in time to see the alien ship move closer. It was massive, at least twice the size of the Eternal Dawn. If they wanted to destroy the human ship, it would take them only seconds. A message came through, full of static and strange sounds. Then somehow words formed. The computer was translating. "Human vessel, we see you are damaged. Do you need help?" Captain Park grabbed the communications console. Her hands shook. Yes, we need help. We are dying." There was a pause. Then, "We will come to you. Prepare to receive our crew." The alien ship attached itself to the Eternal Dawn like two pieces of a puzzle. The airlock opened with a hiss and the aliens came through. They were tall and thin, with skin that shimmered like oil on water. Their eyes were large and dark. They moved gracefully, almost like they were floating. The first alien bowed slightly. "I am L, captain of the Ara ship Silent Journey. We will help you." And they did. For the next 20 days, the Ara worked without stopping. They brought food and water, carrying containers through the airlock hour after hour. They brought medical supplies that had never seen before, medicines that healed injuries in hours instead of weeks. They brought power cores from their own ship, pulling them from their own systems to install in the Eternal Dawn. "You are taking too much from yourselves," Captain Park protested. "You will not have enough for your own journey." El made a gesture that looked almost like a human smile. "We will manage. You will die if we do not help. That is not acceptable." Sung worked alongside the Aura engineers. They could not speak each other's languages very well, but they understood the language of desperate repair work. Together, they rebuilt the reactor. Together, they fixed the life support. Together, they saved 3,000 human lives. Watched as Aura medics taught her how to use their equipment. They were patient and kind, showing her again and again until she understood. One of them gave her a small device that could scan for diseases. "Keep it," the medic said. "You will need it more than we will." On the last day, the Eternal Dawn was ready to fly again. The systems hummed with new life. The air was clean and fresh. Children ran through the corridors, laughing for the first time in weeks. Captain Park stood in the airlock with Elle. "We have nothing to give you," she said. "You have taken so much from yourselves to save us. We are poor. We are weak. We cannot repay you." Elle touched his chest in what must have been an aura gesture of peace. "We do not want payment. We helped because it was right, because you needed help and we could give it. This is enough." But Sung stepped forward. He had spent the last 20 days recording everything in the ship's computer, every container of food, every power core, every medical supply, every act of kindness. He had it all written down, saved in a file he called the debt. He looked at Elle with tears in his eyes. He tried to speak in the Aura language using the words he had learned. "We, not forget, humans, not forget, we, pay back, promise." Elle seemed amused by the rough attempt at his language. "There is no need, friend." "Need," Sung insisted. He put his hand over his heart. "We pay back, we promise. Humans never forget." The Aura ship disconnected and drifted away into the stars. The Eternal Dawn turned toward home, toward Earth, toward safety. In his quarters, Sung looked at the file on his computer. 3,000 people alive because of Aura kindness. He made a copy and sent it to Earth's central archives. He marked it as permanent record. He marked it as debt unpaid. Found him there, staring at the screen. "Do you really think we will see them again?" she asked. Sung nodded slowly. "Yes, and when we do, we will repay them. No matter how long it takes, no matter what it costs. This is a debt of life itself. Humanity will remember." Outside, the stars shone cold and distant. But somewhere in that vast darkness, the Aura ship traveled onward, never knowing that they had just made the most loyal friend any species could ever have. They had saved humanity when humanity was helpless. Humanity would not forget, and when humanity repays a debt, entire galaxies take notice. 72 years had passed since the Eternal Dawn limped home to Earth. Most of the people saved by the Aura were now dead, gone peacefully in their sleep after long lives. But their children remembered the stories. They learned about the day aliens saved humanity when no one else could. Sung was still alive, though barely. At 127 years old, he spent his days in a medical facility where machines kept his old body working. But his mind was still sharp. Every day, he looked at the same file on his personal computer. The debt, still unpaid. It bothered him like an itch he could not scratch. The galaxy had changed dramatically since that rescue. Humans were no longer weak and lost. Earth had built ships, hundreds of them, then thousands. They had spread to 50 star systems. They had made friends with other species and learned their technologies. In return, humans had shared their own knowledge. Humanity had become strong. But other things had changed too, and not for the better. They had appeared 20 years ago from the far edge of the galaxy. No one knew where they truly came from. They arrived in massive fleets, their ships dark and covered in weapons. They did not come to trade or talk. They came to conquer. They were brutal and efficient. They would arrive at a planet and give one simple choice: submit or die. Most species submitted. The few who fought were crushed so completely that other species learned to surrender immediately. The empire grew like a cancer, spreading across star system after star system. They had a leader named Os, a war marshal who commanded their fleets. He was known throughout the galaxy as a creature without mercy. Planets that resisted were not just defeated. They were made into examples. Cities burned. Populations were enslaved. Os wanted everyone to fear the name. And now the had discovered the aura. On the Aura homeworld, Elder stood before her people's council. She was El's daughter, and she carried her father's gentle spirit. El had died 10 years ago, peacefully, never knowing what was coming for his people. Wished he were here now. She needed his wisdom. They have sent their demands, she told the council. They want our territory, they want our resources, they want us to become their servants. The council members looked at each other with fear in their eyes. Everyone had heard the stories of what happened to species What are our options? One council member asked. His voice was sad but firm. We can surrender and lose our freedom, or we can fight and likely lose our lives. These are the only choices they give. Is there no one who will help us? Another member asked. Thought of the humans. Her father had told her about them many times before his death. He had saved a ship full of them once, long ago. He had spoken of them with fondness. But that was over 70 years ago. Why would they remember? Why would they care? But she had to try. The Aura had no military to speak of. They were traders and explorers, not warriors. They would be destroyed in days if they attacked. Sent a message to Earth. She included historical records from her father's ship, including the rescue of the Eternal Dawn. She explained the situation. She did not beg, because that was not the Aura way. She simply told the truth and hoped someone would remember. On Earth, Ambassador received the message in her office. She was 88 years old now, her hair completely white, but she still worked every day. She represented humanity in the Galactic Assembly, speaking for Earth in matters of diplomacy and peace. When she saw the message was from the Aura, her heart jumped. When she opened the attached files and saw the recordings from 72 years ago, tears filled her eyes. She remembered everything. The red lights, the fear, the feeling of slow suffocation as oxygen ran low, and then the Aura coming through the airlock like angels, bringing life when there should have been only death. Immediately requested a meeting with Admiral Sung-Ho. He commanded humanity's Third Fleet, the largest and most powerful group of military ships Earth had ever built. They met in a secure room where no one could hear them. Watch this, said, and she played the recordings. Sung-Ho watched silently as Aura carried food and water through the airlock. He watched them pull power cores from their own ship. He watched El refuse payment, asking nothing in return for saving 3,000 human lives. When the recording ended, Sung-Ho sat quietly for a long moment. They are threatening them, he finally asked. Yes, the Aura will be destroyed if someone does not help them. Sung-Ho nodded slowly. How long ago did Sung make his promise? 72 years. And the debts? Pulled up the file. The debt, unpaid, still there in Earth's central archives, marked permanent, marked priority. We have never forgotten, said. Every human child learns this story in school. The species that saved us when we had nothing. We have been waiting for this day. Sung-Ho stood up. Then the debt is called, we must answer. But it was not that simple. The decision to go to war had to be approved by the government. And Sung-Ho went before President One and the United Earth Assembly. The debate was fierce. Counselor Dongmin stood and spoke against military action. The Empire controls 300 star systems, he argued. They have fleets that number in the thousands. We would be destroyed. We cannot risk all of humanity for an old story. Other counselors agreed. The risk was too great. They were too powerful. It was sad what was happening to the Aura, but humanity had to think of its own survival. President One listened to all the arguments. Then she stood, and the entire chamber fell silent. She was a small woman, but when she spoke, everyone listened. 72 years ago, 3,000 humans were dying in the dark, she said. The Aura found them. The aura could have ignored them. It would have been safer. It would have been easier. But they did not ignore them. They gave everything they could spare and more than they could spare. They asked for nothing in return. She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of each counselor. If we turn away now, what are we? If we forget this debt, if we abandon those who saved us, then we do not deserve the gift they gave us. And that gift was our lives, our children's lives, our future. The chamber was completely silent. I call for a vote, one said. Do we honor our debt, or do we become the kind of species that forgets? Every hand rose. The vote was unanimous. Humanity would go to war. Orders went out immediately. Fleets began to move toward the border. Weapons were loaded. Soldiers prepared for battle. Earth's factories worked day and night, building more ships, more weapons, more equipment. In his medical facility, Sung watched the news reports. Nurses came running when his heart monitor showed unusual activity. They found him crying but smiling. We remembered, he whispered. We kept the promise. On the Ara home world received Earth's response. It was simple and direct. Stand behind us. We will protect you. She could not believe it. How could humanity stand against the Empire? The humans were kind to remember, but they would be destroyed. She sent a message back. We are honored, but you cannot win this. Please save yourselves. Do not die for us. The response from Admiral Sung Ho came quickly. You saved us when you could not afford to. We will save you no matter the cost. This is what it means to be human. We remember our friends. Across the galaxy, they learned that humans were massing ships near Ara space. War Marshal Os laughed when he heard the news. His intelligence reports showed perhaps 50 human ships gathering, 50 ships against the thousands he commanded. It was not even a fair fight. He sent a mocking message to the humans. Foolish creatures, you will burn with the Ara. We will make your planets our next conquest. But Os did not understand humans. He did not know about the promise made 72 years ago. He did not know about the debt file that every human leader had read. He did not know that humanity had spent 72 years preparing for this exact moment. The galaxy watched nervously as human ships approached Ara territory. Most species thought humanity was being noble but stupid. The Empire could not be defeated. Everyone knew this. But they were about to learn something new. They were about to learn what happens when you threaten someone humanity cares about. They were about to learn why making humans indebted to you is the most dangerous thing in the galaxy. The storm was gathering, and it wore a human face. The human fleet arrived at the edge of Ara space exactly 3 days after President One's declaration. 50 ships emerged from faster-than-light travel, their hulls gleaming in the light of distant stars. To the Ara watching on their sensors, it was a beautiful sight. To the rest of the galaxy, it looked like a funeral procession. Commander Young stood on the bridge of the dreadnought Unbreakable Promise, the flagship of the Human Defensive Force. He was a career military officer who had spent 30 years in space. He had fought pirates and raiders. He had protected colony ships and trading vessels, but he had never faced anything like the Empire. Status report, he ordered. His tactical officer looked up from her console. All 50 ships are in position. Shields are active. Weapons are ready. We have established a defensive perimeter around the Ara home world. Young nodded. 50 ships. It seemed like a lot until you remembered that the Empire had thousands. Intelligence reports said Os was bringing at least 2,000 warships to this fight. 2,000 against 50. The math was not encouraging. But Young had his orders directly from Admiral Sung Ho. The message had been clear and simple. You are authorized to use Protocol Omega. Show them what happens when humanity repays its debts. Protocol Omega. Young had trained for it, but he had never thought he would actually use it. No human had ever used it in real combat. It was the result of 70 years of secret development, technologies that Earth had shared with no one. The galaxy thought humans were strong but conventional. They had no idea what was really waiting in those 50 ships. On the Ara home world, Elder stood on a viewing platform with other council members. They could see the human ships in orbit, small points of light against the darkness. They looked so tiny, so fragile. "They are going to die for us," one council member said quietly. "We should tell them to leave. This is not their fight." Shook her head. "I already tried. They refused. They say this is a debt they must repay." "But we asked for nothing. My father asked for nothing when he saved them." "I know," said, "but humans are different. They do not forget kindness. It means something deeper to them than we understand." Across the galaxy, other species watched the situation develop with mixed feelings. The Galactic Assembly held an emergency session. Representatives from dozens of species debated what to do. The ambassador spoke first. "The humans are brave, but they are fools. They will destroy them, then come for us. We should prepare to accept rule before they decide to make examples of us too." Other ambassadors agreed. Some argued that the assembly should condemn humanity's action as reckless. Others suggested they should formally apologize to them for the inconvenience. But there were a few voices of support. The ambassador, an old species that had once helped humanity establish its first colony, stood to speak. 72 years ago, the Ara showed mercy to strangers. Today, those strangers honor that mercy. Perhaps we should remember what honor means, rather than rushing to bow to tyrants. The debate continued for hours, but in the end, the assembly did nothing. They would watch and wait. If humanity won, which no one believed possible, they would celebrate. If humanity lost, they would mourn briefly and then submit to rule. Aboard the Unbreakable Promise, Young received updates from his intelligence team. The fleet was 3 days away, moving at combat speed. Os was bringing everything he had. The War Marshal wanted to make a statement, to crush the humans so completely that no other species would ever dare defy thee again. "Commander, we are receiving a transmission from the fleet," the communications officer said. "Put it through." The screen filled with the image of Os. He was massive and covered in dark scales that looked like armor. His eyes glowed with a cold light. When he spoke, his voice sounded like rocks grinding together. "Human Commander, you have made a terrible mistake. You cannot win. You cannot even slow us down. Leave now and we will kill you quickly. Stay and we will make your deaths last for days." Young looked at the War Marshal calmly. "We made a promise 72 years ago. We are keeping that promise. If you want the Ara, you will have to go through us." Os laughed, a sound like metal scraping metal. "Through you? You are 50 ships. I have 2,000. Your little fleet will be debris within the hour." "Maybe," Young said, "but we will see. I suggest you bring more ships. 50 might not be enough to stop us." The transmission cut off. Around the bridge, Young's crew looked at him with wide eyes. Had their commander really just insulted the most feared military leader in the galaxy? Young smiled slightly. "Let him underestimate us. It will make this easier." Deep in the ship's secure systems, the artificial intelligence called Athena activated advanced protocols. Athena had been built specifically for this kind of combat. She began running battle simulations, calculating every possible move they might make. She controlled the ship's weapons, shields, and navigation with a speed no human could match. But Athena was not just on the Unbreakable Promise. She was on all 50 ships, her consciousness split across the entire fleet. The 50 ships were not 50 separate units. They were 50 parts of one incredibly smart weapon system, and they had been designed for exactly this purpose. On Earth, Admiral Sung-Ho watched the situation from his command center. He had reports coming in from across human space. Every military ship had been called to duty. Thousands of vessels were being prepared, weapons loaded, crews assembled. But they were staying hidden for now, waiting. His tactical officer approached. "Admiral, the second and third waves are ready. Should we send them to join Commander Young? Not yet, Sung-ho said. Let them think they are facing only 50 ships. Let them commit fully to the attack. When they realize their mistake, it will be too late. President One contacted him on a secure channel. Admiral, the other species are saying we are going to be destroyed. They think we have gone mad. Let them think that, Sung-ho replied. Fear has made them forget what it means to stand up for something. We will remind them. And if we lose? Sung-ho was quiet for a moment. Then we lose fighting for those who saved us. There are worse ways to die. But he did not believe they would lose. Humanity had prepared for this. They had spent 72 years building weapons the galaxy had never seen. They had studied tactics, analyzed their ships, found their weaknesses. They had developed technologies in secret, sharing nothing with other species, waiting for this exact moment. Aboard the Unbreakable Promise, the crew performed their final checks. Engineers that the quantum disruption fields were functioning properly. Weapons officers loaded the Singularity torpedoes, missiles that could create tiny black holes. The drone bay was filled with millions of small attack drones, each one controlled by Athena's network. Young walked through the ship, talking to his crew. They were nervous, but they were ready. Many of them were descendants of the Eternal Dawn survivors. They had grown up hearing about the Ara rescue. This fight was personal for them. Commander, a young weapons officer said, "Are we really going to win?" Young put a hand on the officer's shoulder. "We are going to keep our promise. That is all that matters. Win or lose, the Ara will know that humanity stands with its friends." 2 days before the arrival, Commander Haste's destroyer Final Word detected something at the edge of the system. It was a scout ship, watching the human fleet and reporting back to us. "Should we destroy it?" Hayes' tactical officer asked. "No," Hayes said. "Let them watch. Let them see 50 ships and think this will be easy. Let them report that we are vulnerable, that we are weak, that we are doomed. When they arrive expecting an easy victory, we will show them the truth." The scout ship continued to watch, sending constant updates to the fleet. 50 human ships, only 50. Oz received the reports and smiled. This would be quick. Brutal, but quick. On the Ara home world could not sleep. She stood on the viewing platform all night, watching the human ships orbit her planet. She thought about her father, about El's kindness to strangers. She thought about how that single act of mercy, done without expecting anything in return, had led to this moment. 50 human ships ready to die for her people. She wanted to tell them to leave. She wanted to save them from the slaughter that was coming. But she knew they would not go. Humans were stubborn like that. They kept their promises, even foolish ones. The final day before the battle arrived. Young gathered his command crew for a briefing. He showed them the battle plan, the protocols they would follow, the weapons they would use. Some of the crew had never seen these weapons before. They looked at the specifications with shock and awe. "This is what we have been building for 70 years, one officer whispered. "This is why everything was so secret." Young nodded. "We have been preparing to repay the debt. Now finally we can." He opened a channel to all 50 ships. Every captain, every crew member could hear him. "In a few hours the fleet will arrive. They think they are coming to crush weak humans and defenseless Ara. They think this will be easy. They are wrong." He paused, looking at the faces on the screens around him. 72 years ago, the Ara gave everything they could spare to save our people. They did it expecting nothing. They did it because it was right. Today, we return that gift. We fight not for glory, not for conquest. We fight because we are human and humans remember. We fight because the Ara are our friends and we protect our friends. Around him, his crew stood. On the other ships, crews prepared their stations with renewed determination. "All ships, battle readiness in 1 hour. Let's show the galaxy what humanity really is." The storm was no longer gathering. It was here, and it was about to break. The fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel like a dark wave. 2,000 warships appeared at the edge of the system, so many that they blocked out the stars behind them. Each ship was massive and covered in weapons. Together, they represented the military might that had conquered 300 star systems. War Marshal Oz stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Endless Conquest. He looked at the tactical display showing the 50 human ships near the Ara home world, 50 tiny dots against his 2,000. It was almost insulting. "Begin the attack," he ordered. "I want every human ship destroyed within the hour. Leave nothing but wreckage." The fleet moved forward like a giant predator approaching prey, their weapons charged, glowing with deadly energy. This would be easy. This would be quick. Commander Young watched the approach on his screens. His hands were steady, his breathing calm. Around him, the bridge crew waited for his orders. In the other 49 ships, captains and crews did the same. "Athena battle analysis," Young said quietly. The artificial intelligence responded instantly, her voice smooth and cold. "Enemy fleet composition, 2,000 warships. Estimated time until weapons range, 8 minutes. Probability of victory based on their knowledge, 99.7%. Actual probability, 0.03%. Young smiled. "I like our odds better. Activate Protocol Omega, all phases." Confirmed, Protocol Omega active. Across all 50 ships, systems came online that the galaxy had never seen before. Power readings spiked to levels that should have been impossible. The ships began to glow with a strange blue light. On the Ara homeworld, millions watched their screens in terrified silence, stood with her council, unable to look away. The human ships looked so small against the fleet. This was going to be a massacre. The fleet reached weapons range. Oz gave the order, "Fire." 2,000 ships fired at once. The space between the fleets lit up with energy beams, missiles, and projectiles, enough firepower to destroy a planet focused on 50 human ships. And then something impossible happened. The human ships activated their quantum disruption fields. The weapons hit invisible barriers and simply stopped existing. Energy beams scattered into harmless light. Missiles dissolved into atoms. Projectiles turned to dust. Not a single shot reached the human ships. On the Endless Conquest, Oz stared at his screens in confusion. "What is this? Fire again." The fleet fired again. The same result. Their weapons were hitting something they could not see, something that was destroying their attacks before they could reach their targets. Young's voice was ice cold. "Athena, show them what we brought. Singularity torpedoes, pattern Alpha." From the human ships, small missiles launched. They moved slower than normal missiles, almost casually. The ships tried to shoot them down, but their weapons had no effect on the torpedoes' shields. The first torpedo reached a warship. It detonated. A tiny black hole appeared where the ship had been. The black hole existed for only 3 seconds, but that was enough. The warship and 5 others near it were pulled in and crushed into nothing. When the black hole collapsed, there was only empty space where 6 warships had been. Across the fleet, alarms screamed. The humans had fired 20 torpedoes. 20 tiny black holes bloomed like deadly flowers. 120 ships simply ceased to exist. Oz could not believe what he was seeing. Impossible. How do they have this technology? But the humans were not done. Young gave the next order, "Release the swarms." From each human ship, bays opened and millions of tiny objects poured out. They looked like insects, small and fast, but each one was a drone controlled by Athena's network. Each one carried a powerful explosive, and there were millions of them. The swarm moved like a living thing, flowing through space toward the fleet. They tried to shoot them down, but there were too many. For every drone destroyed, 100 more got through. The drones hit the ships and exploded. Individually, each explosion was small, but millions of small explosions happening at once. Ships began to break apart. Armor cracked. Hulls split open. Ships that had survived dozens of battles were torn to pieces by swarms of tiny attackers. Commander Hay, watching from the final word, saw her chance. "Focus all fire on the command ship," she ordered. The human were different from normal ship weapons. They used magnetic fields to accelerate small projectiles to 5% of light speed. At that speed, even a small piece of metal had devastating power. 10 human ships fired there at the Endless Conquest. 20 metal slugs, each one moving at 15,000 kilometers per second, hit OS's flagship. The shields held for exactly 2 seconds before collapsing. The projectiles punched through the armor like it was paper. The Endless Conquest shuddered under the impact. Systems failed throughout the ship. Fires broke out. OS was thrown from his command chair. "Shields down, hull breaches on 12 decks, we are losing power," his officers screamed. But the true revelation was yet to come. Young opened a fleet-wide communication. "This is Commander Young to all Earth forces that have committed their fleet. Execute Phase 2. From empty space all around the system, thousands of new signatures appeared. Ships emerged from faster-than-light travel coming from every direction. Not 50 ships, 5,000 ships. The entire human fleet, hidden and waiting, now surrounded the galaxy watched in shock. The other species at the Galactic Assembly could not believe their sensors. Where had all these ships come from? How had humanity hidden them so well? Admiral Sung Ho's voice broadcast on all frequencies. "Attention fleet, you are surrounded. You have one chance to surrender. Lower your weapons and prepare to be boarded. If you fire one more shot, we will destroy you all." OS dragged himself back to his command chair. His beautiful fleet was being destroyed. In less than 20 minutes, he had lost 300 ships, 300, and now he was surrounded by thousands of human vessels. "War Marshal, we must retreat," his second officer pleaded. "No," OS roared. We do not retreat, we do not surrender." He gave the order to keep fighting. The fleet tried to break through the human encirclement. They fired everything they had. The human response was devastating. 5,000 ships attacked as one, coordinated by Athena's network. It was not a battle, it was execution. Ships exploded. Some tried to run, but human ships were faster. Some tried to surrender, and those were allowed to drop their shields and power down. But most fought and most died. Commander Hay saw the Endless Conquest trying to escape. "That one is mine," she said. "All power to engines, cut them off." The final word intercepted OS's damaged flagship. Hay's weapons officer targeted the enemy ship's engines with surgical precision, not to destroy, but to disable. "Fire," Hay ordered. The Endless Conquest went dark, its engines destroyed. It drifted in space, helpless. "Boarding teams, prepare to take prisoners," Hay said. "I want OS alive." The battle lasted 4 hours. When it ended, the fleet was gone. Of the 2,000 warships that had arrived, only 400 remained. All 400 had surrendered. The rest were debris floating in space. Human casualties, 0. Not a single human ship had been destroyed. 17 had minor damage. That was all. Young sat in his command chair, exhausted. Around him, his crew was silent. They had trained for this battle for years, but actually doing it was different. They had just destroyed most of the galaxy's most feared fleet. "Status report," Young said quietly. "All enemy ships have surrendered or been destroyed. We have complete control of the system. The Ara home world is secure." On that home world, and her people stood in stunned silence. They had watched the battle on their screens, unable to comprehend what they were seeing. The humans had not just won. They had completely and totally dominated it had not even been close. "How?" one council member whispered. "How did they become so powerful?" Thought about what Young had said before the battle. 72 years of preparation. 72 years of building weapons in secret. 72 years of getting ready to repay a debt. "They did this for us," she said softly. "They built all of this, prepared all of this, just so they could keep a promise made by people who are mostly dead now." Admiral Sung-ho broadcast a message to every ship, every planet, every species that was watching. His voice was calm but firm. "This is Admiral Sung-ho of Earth's combined fleet. Let this be a message to the galaxy. Humanity does not forget. We remember our friends. We remember our debts. The Aura saved 3,000 of us when we were helpless. Today, we return that gift." He paused, and when he spoke again, his voice was harder, colder. "But let this also be a warning. We remember our enemies just as well. They came to destroy those we care about. They thought we were weak. They were wrong. Any empire, any species that threatens our friends will face what they face today. We will cross galaxies. We will move stars. We will do whatever it takes." On the disabled, endless conquest, As heard the message. He had conquered hundreds of worlds. He had crushed dozens of species. He had thought himself invincible. He had been wrong. The humans had crushed him like he was nothing. As boarding teams came to take him prisoner, As realized the terrible truth. The humans had not shown their full strength until now because they had been waiting for a reason to unleash everything they had built. And that reason had been repaying a debt of kindness. The galaxy would never be the same. The news of the defeat spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. Within days, every species knew what had happened at Aura Prime. The empire that had seemed invincible had been destroyed by humans in a single battle. The galaxy was in shock. On Earth, Admiral Sung-ho stood in the command center watching reports come in from across space. The empire was collapsing. Without their fleet, without their war marshal, the species they had conquered were rising up. Planets that had been enslaved for years were declaring independence. Colonies were driving out their overlords. "Admiral, we are receiving surrender requests from held territories across the galaxy," his communications officer reported. "They want to negotiate before we arrive." Sung-ho nodded. "Send the same message to all of them. Release your slaves. Surrender peacefully. Allow the people you conquered to go home. Do this and we will not destroy you. Refuse and you will share As's fate." Human fleets began appearing at every controlled system. The pattern was always the same. The humans would arrive, make their demands, and wait. Most commanders surrendered immediately. The few who tried to fight were crushed so quickly that other commanders stopped trying. Within 3 weeks, the empire that had taken 20 years to build simply ceased to exist. 300 star systems were free again. But humanity did something that shocked the galaxy even more than the military victory. They did not claim the conquered territories for themselves. President One made an announcement that every species heard. "Earth has no interest in building an empire," she declared. "We did not come to conquer. We came to repay a debt to friends. All territories taken by the will be returned to their original inhabitants. Species that were enslaved will be freed and given aid to rebuild. We ask for nothing in return." The Galactic Assembly held an emergency session. Representatives from dozens of species could not understand. Why would humanity give up so much power? They had the military strength to rule half the galaxy now. Why were they giving it away? The ambassador, the old species that had helped humanity long ago, spoke to the assembly. "They are doing this because it is right, because they do not fight for power. They fight for their friends. Perhaps we should learn from this." On the Aura homeworld, preparations were being made for a ceremony. Commander Young's fleet had returned to orbit. The captive leaders, including As, had been brought to the planet's surface. Now came the question of justice. Elder stood before the Aura Council in their great chamber. Around her sat the members of her species. In the center of the room, in chains, stood As and his officers. The war marshal who had threatened to destroy them all now looked small and defeated. "What should we do with them?" one council member asked. "They came to enslave us. They would have killed us all." Young and several human officers stood at the side of the chamber. They had not said anything, but knew they were waiting to see what the Aura would choose. This was not a human decision to make. Looked at As. She thought about all the suffering he had caused, all the species enslaved, all the worlds burned, all the lives destroyed. It would be easy to execute him. It would be what he deserved. But she thought about her father, El. She remembered his teachings. Violence answered with violence creates only more violence. Mercy creates the possibility of change. "We choose exile," announced. As and his officers will be stripped of their power and exiled to a distant world. They will live, but they will never command again. They will spend their remaining years thinking about what they have done. The council chamber was silent. Some council members looked disappointed. They had wanted harsher punishment. But Young stepped forward and bowed too. "You honor your father's memory," he said quietly, "and you show the galaxy that there is another way. We will respect your decision." As stared at in disbelief. "You are letting me live, after everything I would have done to you." Met his eyes. "Yes, because we are not like you. We do not find joy in causing pain. Go into exile, live with your failure. Maybe someday you will understand what you did wrong." They were taken away. They would be transported to a remote planet and left there with basic supplies but no ships, no weapons, no way to leave. They would live out their days remembering how they had fallen. Days later, the memorial ceremony was held on Ara Prime. Humans and Ara gathered together in the planet's largest plaza. Statues were unveiled showing El and the rescue of the Eternal Dawn. A garden was planted, with flowers from both Earth and the Ara home world growing together. And at the center of it all, an ancient Sung stood with the help of medical equipment. At 127 years old, he was barely alive. Machines helped his heart beat. Drugs kept his old body functioning. But he had insisted on being here. He had waited 72 years for this moment. Approached him slowly. She carried a holographic device that projected an image of her father, El, taken when he was young. "This is the being who saved you," she said. Sung looked at the image with tears running down his wrinkled face. "I remember him," he whispered. "I remember his kindness. I promised him we would repay. I kept that promise." "You have paid far more than the debt required," said gently. "My father gave you food and power cores. You gave us an entire fleet. You destroyed an empire for us. This is too much." Sung shook his head weakly. "There is no too much when repaying those who gave us life itself. Your father and his crew could have ignored us. They could have saved themselves the trouble, but they did not. They gave everything they could spare and more than they could spare." He reached out with a shaking hand and touched the holographic image. "They did it expecting nothing. We did this because we could not expect to do less. This is who humanity is. We remember every kindness. We forget no friend. And we will cross galaxies and topple empires to honor those who believed in us." Took his hand. Around them, thousands watched in silence. Humans and Ara together, united by an act of mercy that had happened over 7 decades ago. Ambassador stepped forward. She was 88 now, but she stood tall. "I was there on the Eternal Dawn," she told the crowd. "I was suffocating in the dark when the Ara found us. I will never forget the moment their ships docked with ours. We thought we were dead. They gave us life." She looked at the Ara in the crowd. "We have repaid the debt of survival, but there is another debt we can never fully repay, the debt of hope. You showed us that the universe contains kindness, not just cruelty. You showed us that strangers can become friends. You taught us to be better than we were." President One stood next to her. "Today, we announce a new alliance, the Our-Human Partnership. We will explore space together. We will trade together. We will protect each other, not because of a debt, but because we choose to. Friends do not need debts to help each other." The ceremony lasted for hours. Stories were told. Songs were sung. People from both species met and talked, learning about each other, building new friendships. As the sun set on Ara Prime, Sung sat in a quiet corner of the garden with. He was exhausted but peaceful. "I can rest now," he said softly. "The debt is paid." Squeezed his hand gently. "Thank you for everything, for remembering, for keeping the promise, for showing the galaxy what humanity truly is." Sung closed his eyes and smiled. "We are loyal, we are stubborn, we remember always." He died peacefully that night in his sleep on the world of the people he had helped save. His last words were recorded by the medical staff. "We kept our word." His death was mourned across 2 species, but his life and the promise he had kept became legend. Every human child would learn his story. Every Ara would remember his name. Across the galaxy, the other species watched the new alliance with mixed emotions. Some were grateful that humanity had freed them from the. Some were nervous about how powerful humans had become. All of them were learning a new lesson. The ambassador sent a private message to his government. Never make an enemy of humanity, but more importantly, if they offer friendship, accept it. They are the most loyal allies anyone could ever have. The who had helped humanity establish their first colony years ago received a message from Earth. It was a simple thank you and an offer. "You helped us when we were weak. We have not forgotten. If you ever need aid, you need only ask." The elder read the message and laughed with joy. "We gave them 1 colony world decades ago. Now they offer us the protection of the galaxy's most powerful fleet. Humanity's gratitude is worth more than gold." On a remote space station, a young Ara child named asked her mother a question. "Are humans scary?" Her mother thought about the battle. She thought about the fleet being destroyed. She thought about the weapons humanity had built in secret. "They can be scary," she admitted. "Very scary." "Should we be afraid of them?" Her mother looked out at the human ships orbiting nearby, protecting their world. "Only if you wrong them or their friends. To everyone else, to those who show them kindness, they are the most loyal species in existence. They are our friends, and a human friend is forever." Across the galaxy, a new saying began to spread. It started as a joke, then became wisdom, then became a rule that every species learned. Make allies of humanity if you can. Make enemies of them if you must. But never, ever make them indebted to you, unless you are prepared for them to move the stars themselves in repayment. 50 years later, a new species called the encountered a lost human research vessel. The ship had been damaged in an asteroid field. 3 researchers were aboard, running out of air. The captain had heard the stories. She knew what humanity had done for the Ara. She had a choice to make. She chose to help. The human researcher named Bo thanked her profusely as crew transferred supplies to the damaged ship. "We will remember this," Bo said, putting her hand over her heart. "Humanity never forgets." The captain smiled nervously. She had heard those words before in the stories. She was not sure if she should be honored or terrified. But deep down, she knew she had made the right choice. Because humanity's friendship, earned through a simple act of kindness, was the most valuable thing in the galaxy. And their gratitude, as they had learned, could destroy empires. The debt was paid, but the friendship would last forever, and that, in the end, was worth more than any debt could ever be.